Okay, so thanks again, everybody, for being here with us. I'm Lindsay St. Antoine, and I am a radical honesty trainer and have been since 2017, and worked with Brad Blanton, who wrote the book Radical Honesty, and was on the Radical Honesty team for many years up until about a year and a half ago, maybe. And I live in Denver, Colorado, and lead online and in-person workshops and also do coaching. And used to be on the board with Mac as well. And Mac, what would you like to say?
All right, thanks. My name's Mac, and I was certified as a radical honesty trainer in 2017. I currently serve on the board of the Radical Honesty Institute and help run programs training new people to be trainers of radical honesty. And I do this as a living. It's my main source of income, running workshops and doing coaching. And I also live in Costa Rica, where I have an eco retreat center where I do, in addition to radical honesty workshops, we also operate as a venue where people come and do yoga retreats or women's retreats or whatever. And I just love it. It's a beautiful place out in the jungle down there, lots of water, lots of nature. And currently I'm in Aberdeen, Scotland, on a little tour doing weekend workshops in Europe, and headed back to the States in a couple weeks.
And we're doing this because Mac and I used to date each other. And I mean, I'm sure if you read did everybody here read the articles that we wrote? And I'm assuming that's how you got here. So you probably know a little bit about our background if that's the case. Mac and I were together for a few years, practiced radical honesty from the beginning. Mac.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, like, I think we mentioned in the article itself that the first conversation that we had was about honesty. And I think that you had already been to like one workshop and we're just starting to get into it at the time.
Yeah.
But I had never heard of radical honesty. And like right at the beginning of our relationship, when we first met, we started talking about it. And then within a few dates, like already started going to meetups together.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
And I think kind of because of your enthusiasm kind of made that the foundation of our relationship. I mean, I was also enthusiastic, but I think really you as the catalyst for setting that as the foundation of how we were going to be with one another throughout our relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So right from the beginning, we were functioning from this place of let's see what happens if we're really honest with each other, like more than we tend to be in romantic relationships with each other. So we got a lot of experience and a lot of practice in, yeah, just being that way with each other. And if you read the articles, then you know that it wasn't always easy. It wasn't always fun. It wasn't always comfortable, that's for sure. And yeah, overall, I'll say from the very beginning, I'm still very glad and very grateful that that's the way that we did our relationship with each other. And I imagine it has a lot to do with us still being able to be friends who appreciate each other a lot now. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot that we could talk about right now, and I think we're both happy to talk about anything on this topic. And we might just start out chatting a little bit. We were meeting just before we came on with all of you about what we might talk about during this call, and the conversation kind of took, I don't know, maybe an unexpected turn, I think, for what we ended up thinking we could talk about, Mac, with like a lot of people we imagine don't actually want all that much honesty in their relationships, is kind of what we came around to. So we have some opinions on that and could say a lot about that as well. And I'm curious, with a few of you here with us tuned in, if anybody has anything like in particular that you're really hoping we talk about today, or questions, that you've got in mind already, you can certainly let us know. And Mac, is there anything that you want to just start out talking about in particular, or shall we check in and see what people want?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about how, this idea that just kind of sprang up spontaneously before everybody else jumped on. And
Yeah.
I am curious to hear what's on everyone else's mind too, see if that takes us in a different direction.
Yeah, okay. So maybe let's start there. Anybody who's here with us right now, and for those of you who don't have your video on, if there is something that you want us to talk about, you can feel free to type it in the chat as well if you don't want to come on, and be
Mm.
live with us since we're recording.
Yeah. Yeah, my preference is as many of you as possible who'd like to join in with your video and your voice and just join in the conversation with us, great.
Yep, we'd
And
love
if not, yeah, you can drop questions in the chat.
Yep.
And Lindsay, if you want to make me co-host, I can,
Oh.
help you out with the hosting
Cool.
as well.
Yep, I don't see how to do that right now. I can only see how to make you host, so I'm just going to skip it.
Okay,
So take
no
time
worries.
to figure it out. Okay, so those of you who are here with us, anybody have any questions in mind or even just thoughts?
I do.
Yeah, go for it, Carol.
I'm a little confused. So are you saying that you're going to change the topic of what
No,
the
no,
original meeting was about?
no,
Because-
not at all.
Because
No,
I'm all for the uncomfortable stuff personally.
yeah,
I mean, it's easy to be honest to say, I like your hair today, but I'm not here for that,
yeah, totally.
I read your relationship stuff, and that's what drew me to it. So I'm hoping we're going to get somewhere close to what that was presented as.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. All we were saying before was that what came up when Mac and I were talking before you all came on with us was that, the topic of this is, can we be too honest with our partners or spouses or whatever it might be? And we were talking about how really it seems to us like a lot of people just don't want all that much honesty in their relationships or are afraid of what might happen if they do start to be more honest. And that what it maybe comes down to a lot of the time is that people really want to be with someone. They really want to be in romantic relationship. They really want to be married. They really want to have a partner. And so that pull is stronger than the pull to be very authentic or, to be super honest about everything. And so we avoid talking about some things or even revealing parts of ourselves that are like really important to us in order to maintain a relationship, even if it's not a very authentic connection. Yeah, so that's what we were thinking. That's what we talked about a little bit before y'all came on with us. So still very much in the same vein of how honest is too honest, or can we be too honest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, well, count me in then.
All right. Yeah, I think in general, you said something that just seemed to really hit in a way that I liked it, Lindsay, about how if honesty is going to come into conflict with maintaining the relationship, if being honest is going to break up the relationship, then people don't want to be honest.
Right.
Like that's the main thing. Like
a lot of people, and obviously not everyone,
right.
But in general.
Sure. We're talking in broad strokes here.
Totally.
And I think that's really the main thing. We're not willing to sacrifice the attachment that we have with our partners for the authenticity in order to be authentically who we really are.
Right.
And Gabor Mate talks about this a lot. I love that he puts these two things on like a spectrum that are kind of in conflict with one another sometimes, attachment and authenticity. And he says that both of these things are like kind of prime needs for infants, for human beings, right? To be authentically who I am, but also I need somebody to be here with me.
Yeah.
And that if ever those two things come into conflict, which they very often do, that most of us almost always sacrifice the authenticity for the attachment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's just such a beautiful way to look at this problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we very much had that problem too, even though now outside of our relationship, it's easy for both of us to think, especially because I'm single right now, it's easy for me to think like, oh, I'll never do that again. Like I'll never sacrifice authenticity for attachment or connection again. And I don't imagine that's probably entirely true. And who knows, I'm not sure if we'll see the next time I'm in a relationship again. But yeah, I mean, me especially, well, it's easy for me to say me especially. I very much was attached to the idea of being, staying in connection with you, maintaining
Yeah.
our romantic relationship.
Mhm.
So much so that I think I wasn't even able to be fully honest with myself, or just wasn't fully aware of everything that was happening for me, that I could
Sure.
even share honestly with you, because I wasn't clear about those things for myself, because I was so, yeah, attached to being attached to you.
Right, because
Yeah,
that was the primary thing. Like the most important thing was staying together,
right.
like maintaining the attachment. And
Yeah,
then wherever we could find ways to be authentic without, too much sacrificing the attachment, then that's what we went for.
exactly. Yeah.
But the real sticking points for us were those very few things that were like, oh, maybe this is the thing that's too much, that's going to have the relationship fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see here that, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you pronounce it Tamara or Tamara. Curious about oversharing versus healthy amount of honesty.
Hmm.
So we can chat a bit about that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Great question. I don't know the answer to that.
Because there is no one answer, I imagine
Yeah.
that this depends so much on the people who are in the relationship with each other. What There's no particular definition for what's oversharing and what is a healthy amount of honesty. Um,
It also depends on what your goals are. Like, is your goal to maintain the relationship, or is your goal really personal growth, authentic expression of self, right? Are you willing to sacrifice um, the partnership in order to discover who it is that you really are? Or is the most important thing like maintaining the relationship? I think not always, but sometimes those will come into conflict in that way.
And I also think there are a lot of people who are strongly committed to both of those things. Like
Mhm.
we are married, we're committed to being together for the rest of our lives, and we both want to grow. We want to grow alongside each other, learn about ourselves alongside each other.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's like there are so many different ways to approach this honesty thing with
Yeah.
each other. Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the main values for both of us when we were together was our personal growth, and kind of seeing each other as support figures to grow both as individuals, and doing that together, like
Right.
leaning on each other to grow as individuals and strengthening the relationship at the same time.
Yeah.
And even so, there were times when, well, who you are or what you are doing are really painful for me right
Totally.
now.
Yeah. Yep. And then wanting to change each other. I mean, for me, at least,
Mhm.
there was a lot of wanting you to change. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you're being honest with me and you're doing things that are like an honest expression of who you are. And I'm really hurt by those things. I
Mhm.
hate that. I'm mad at you. I feel like shit. I want you
Uh-huh.
to change. I want you to stop wanting those things. I want that to
Right.
stop being an authentic expression of who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want you to be 100% authentic and honest with me, and I want you to not do anything that hurts too bad.
Yeah. Yep. Which,
So the only option is I try to change you.
yeah. Yep. Yeah, because it did not feel like an option at the time to not be together.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can talk more about what Tamara asked about there, because we didn't quite get into it. But I see, Vlad, you've got a question there, and you can feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay. Um, so yeah, what you just described is pretty much the same situation that I find myself in currently.
Yeah.
I have a romantic partner with whom we don't have technically a physical relationship, but we have a very close platonic friendship.
Hmm.
Mm.
And we work towards building each other up as individuals, as freelancers, as decent people who are kind of responsible for their own actions. And so there is this third thing, like a concept that comes to mind between authenticity and attachment, which is autonomy. And I think anytime that I feel that I can't be with that I can't be on par with my partner, and I can't meet her like demands, or I try to think of ways in which I can help myself, in which I can not be a burden to her if she can't meet, or if she can't give me attention in this current moment.
Mm.
And that's been kind of a struggle, because she's also maintaining like a relationship of her own, which she's kind of trying to find maybe an exit to, but I don't want to lean against that. I just respect her way too much as a person. I don't want to express any opinion on that. Like, I've told her, if she wants any advice or any support with anything, I'm there to help. But she's been very good to leave me out of her love life, and I don't want to be intrusive in any way. It's just very much enough for me to be her friend, and it's the most loving and good experience that I've had in years. We've been friends for a long time.
And would you like a romantic relationship with her?
It's been a struggle for me to figure out if I'm gearing towards that. Like, is everything that I'm doing trying to do that? Well, actually, no. It's trying to be a better person. It's trying to be authentic. It's trying to be radically responsible and honest. And I'm here today because I think I overdid it a little bit.
Oh, how so?
Well, because maybe I volunteered my heart too freely and openly, and now every time I say something like, "Hey, can we meet?" which used to be such a innocuous thing, now seems like I'm ready to move up a notch on our romantic intensity or something like that.
Seems that
It
way
just
to
becomes
you, or
troublesome.
does it seem that way to you, or you imagine it seems that way to her?
Well, we had a conversation today in which she said she was feeling not conflicted, but that it's like a labyrinth, like there is too much in the air between us. And maybe she doesn't have enough not security but certainty about my goals and motivations.
Ah, great.
In the short term. In the long term, I think we are pretty much set. But I don't know where I want to be with her right now. Maybe that's the problem.
Awesome. I think this is like fertile territory to explore, with being even more honest than you have been about how it is that you are kind of in conflict about, oh, what I want from you, I'm not quite sure. I don't know if I'm sharing too much or too little. And you can share all of that kind of stuff with her as well. I don't want to impose and interfere, and there's stuff that I want to say to you. I tell myself I want to be responsible for myself. And by the way, one of the ways that we be fully responsible for ourselves is by openly sharing what's going on with us and not withholding that from the other person. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
We oftentimes think that, oh, being responsible for myself means keeping secrets. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, not burdening others, that's my business. They shouldn't have to think about that or put effort into it, or
Happily, I'm the opposite of that. That's the problem of her current boyfriend, as she tells it to me, but I prefer not to have a side on that.
Yeah.
I'm overly expressive. That's kind of my issue, maybe. That's why I'm here. I think I can write a poem, or I can try and sing a song, or make a little drawing or an artwork based on something you made me feel, like really, really touched me. And I'm just gonna be really open about that. But sometimes it's kind of like this kind of connection can feel intoxicating, especially if the person is also kind of really poetically, romantically inclined as she is. And I don't want to feel like I'm besieging her. Like, I am perfectly fine with just being friends, but for me, the connection is deepening
Uh-huh.
but it doesn't mean that I want it to progress. Like, do you see the difference maybe there? I can't always say, it appears it's a problem because I can't
Yeah. Well,
define the difference to her.
the way you're talking about her, I don't quite believe you that you're just perfectly fine with being friends with her. I imagine you very much want to be in a romantic relationship with her, just from the things that you're saying. And so I think that is something that could be expressed directly to her, rather than like, oh no, I'm totally fine just being friends and stuff. If you really are
I
thinking
don't have
about
an
her.
opinion on your other
Yeah,
relationship.
exactly.
I don't have any criticisms.
I'm totally
You guys
fine
are
just here and
right.
supportive, blah blah blah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Well,
And the
yeah,
way,
actually, yeah.
well, and I want to make a comment on something else too. And the way that we are talking about being honest in the radical honesty context is less about kind of our poetic expressions of appreciation, but really a more moment to moment reporting of what it is that we're feeling and what it is that we're thinking, and not in so much poetry language, but in very dumb, simple, like childlike language.
Yeah,
And
I really
and the
like the
idea,
mantra. Yeah,
yeah,
if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly.
mm,
I really loved that mantra.
that's pretty good.
I read it today.
Yeah, but the idea is that the more we stay stuck in kind of the aggrandizing language of poetry, the more we kind of are living in our imaginations about things, living in our stories and our fantasies, rather than relating like from being to being, one person to another. And that's why we have the preference for the kind of simple language.
right. It's a lot less romantic and poetic to say, I go really back and forth with how I feel about, like I tell myself that I'm okay with just being friends. And really what's happening for me is a lot of the time I want to deepen what we're doing together. And I have criticisms about the relationship that you're in. And, that stuff's not poetic. That's just a
Mhm.
reporting of the thoughts that you're having that aren't so like fun or sexy to share. It's like,
Uh-huh.
these are the things that are popping up for me. And I'm just sharing them here with you now. Not just all the like rainbows and butterflies and yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm exploring that actually. I'm
Yeah.
experimenting with exactly that kind of um it's kind of like a reducing of the level of language that I'm used to, because I'm used to kind of this maybe a little bit poetic and
Yeah.
flowery
Right.
words,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, and it's
Great.
working. It's actually working. She's saying that she feels like it's demystifying
Mm.
our relationship, which I'm all for. But now
Great.
comes the hard part where I actually have to kind of define things
Uh-huh.
clearly.
Mm.
And that is something that typically we both try to avoid doing. We both try to be like more observers. And now I think I have to maybe take charge a little bit. And it's kind of like I want to connect with something that you led with, that people actually don't feel comfortable with radical honesty, because they value the connection more than the
Mm.
Yeah.
authenticity. And for us, I believe we value both really equally. And so it's just a matter of finding the right tools to explore that. And that's also something I'm interested in, radical honesty. I'm a
Great.
total noob. I haven't read really much at all, but
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully
I
I'll
encourage you
find.
to dive in. It's a completely different way to orient your experience of life and how it is that you relate to other people. I imagine that having a conversation with me now is very different than having a conversation with me when I was, I don't know, 30 when we first met, or 32, whatever. I think I'll just
Thank you so much
leave
for
it at that.
your for your input on this, and I don't mean to overindulge in your attention. But thank you,
Well,
really.
thanks. Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks for talking
Thanks
with
for that.
me.
Good stuff.
So
All right.
let's go back around to oh no, wait, I see somebody else is wanting to speak. Yeah, Maggie, go for it. Let's see. Unmute yourself if you can.
Hi, I had a question pop up in my mind as I was listening to Vlad speaking, but I also think that maybe my question is related to Tamara's about oversharing versus what was it exactly? I don't remember anymore. I was
Healthy
also
sharing, she
starting.
said.
Hmm?
She said oversharing versus healthy sharing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was also thinking about timing and whether
What do you mean?
like from your what?
He was
Bad
making a
joke.
bad joke about his own bad timing by
Timing?
interrupting you.
Oh,
Continue.
okay. I'm focusing a lot on like trying to verbalize my question because I don't have it exactly. So I was not I did not pick up on your joke, Mac. But yeah, I was thinking about timing because as I was listening to Vlad, I was thinking about how I'm gonna have a date tonight with someone I met on Tinder, and we actually had an amazing kind of like radical honesty conversation, like chatting. And I don't usually spend a lot of time chatting with people, not to build up fantasies and this kind of a thing. But now I'm kind of really nervous and I feel my stomach tensing because on one hand, it may not turn out so well because we had such an amazing time chatting, but I think that like I'm almost like more scared, like if it's nice and I like him for real in person. And part of it is that like, so about timing, in general, I'm kind of like not really interested in like a casual kind of dating situation at the moment. Like I'm sort of like low key looking for a baby daddy. Like I want to have a child in the next 2 years is
Uh-huh.
what I've decided. And so there's that. And
And so,
yeah, and so I'm
great.
wondering, like when do I share this? Because I feel like
First
if
date.
nothing else, then
Yeah, first date. Like I do
Uh-huh.
not hesitate to say share that absolutely on the first date. And
Yeah.
yeah, Mac wrote in the article about, I don't think you used the term weeding people out, but something like that. Like
Yeah.
you'd like to know from the beginning, wouldn't you, before you become too attached to him? If he doesn't want to have a baby, I assume that that's a deal breaker for you based on what you just said. So yeah, I think like having that conversation right up front can help you just, I mean, you could talk with him about that in the first 5 minutes. And then if he
Yeah.
says he doesn't want kids, you could say, okay, cool.
Yeah.
We can be done with the date.
Uh-huh.
and I imagine I'll be known as like the crazy lady um who
Yeah,
like
tell
said
him that.
that on the first date.
Yeah, tell him that too. Like, hey, all that stuff that you just told us. Oh
Yep.
my God, like I don't normally like flirt so much and like do all of this, tension building on text because I don't like being disappointed when I meet in real life and stuff. And now I met you and this is what I'm thinking about you now and this is how I feel. Also, hey, by the way, I'm not looking for casual dating. I want a baby daddy. And this is how I feel about telling you that. I'm afraid that, if I don't have a baby soon, I'm going to end up an old, lonely bag lady or whatever.
Yeah, so much of practicing radical honesty is about revealing all of the layers. So I think so often people come to this practice thinking like, I have this thing I want to share with people. How do I start to share that with them? Like, so it could just be about showing up at this date. How do I show up at this date and reveal in the right timing that I want to have a baby? When really, like what Mac is pointing to is there are all these layers to getting to that point, that are there to share as well. It's so much about, being self-aware, checking in with ourselves and reporting what's up for us in that moment. And it's not about strategy. Like I think often a lot of questions that come up around this practice are really kind of pointing to something that we might not even be very aware of, which is like, I'm trying to figure out how to be strategic. You know,
Yeah.
can you, hey, Mac and Lindsay, can you help me figure out how to be strategic with my
Right.
timing with this guy? Because I think I might like him and I don't want to scare him off. So when
Right.
do I tell him about the baby thing?
Uh-huh. Which
Um,
guess what? That's a great thing to say to him on your
Yeah.
first date.
Yeah.
But trying
Yeah.
to figure out when to tell you that I want to make a baby with you.
Yeah. Or that I want to make a baby in general. And
Right.
yeah.
Mm. Yeah, can I say a little bit more? I wanna, because the other part to this is, you know, kind of like about sex, that you know, like, I don't know, on one hand, I'm kind of like mentally preparing to also potentially have sex with him, if not tonight, then kind of soon. I mean, it's a lot of fantasy going on in my head, as you can tell. But I'm also like, with the baby thing, you know, like, I don't know, like, if I guess like I have these, you know, like worries that if I end up, you know, like liking him and wanting to have sex with him, then like that would somehow, you know, like run against or like interfere with, you know, like my intention to be serious about like building a serious relationship. So I guess like I'm just kind of struggling to think about, you know, like how to manage between what I want for myself for the long term, and also like what could arise in the moment, and you know, like how to at the same time like be spontaneous and kind
Yeah.
of, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
What about just telling him all that?
And okay, and if I tell him all of that, like should I not be at the same time like conscious that he might get like be overloaded? Because this is like, maybe
Then
this won't mean anything for you, but this is a Bulgarian man, you know, like
Uh-huh.
they're not like, and I think he's open, I imagine he's open-minded, but still,
So
you
tell
know,
him
like
tell him that. So tell him that too. I'm afraid that all this stuff that I'm saying is overwhelming you. You're a Bulgarian man. You probably can't handle me. Right? I'm way too much.
And
Tell him all that too.
And also, we're not saying that like the moment that you sit down with him, you must drop all of this all at once without taking a break, you know, like you'll be there with him. You'll be, you know, stuff will be coming up in the moment. You'll be conversing, you'll be doing whatever. And, you know, you can make a point of touching on all of these things during the first date. You know, you'll probably be together for a few hours or something. And yeah, and I think everything Mac and I are going to say to you is, okay, tell him that too. Okay, tell him that too.
We're kind of one trick ponies. Like,
Yeah, and so much of it is about, I mean, I just keep saying the same thing, but just sharing what's happening for you in the moment, which so often could be like, oh God, I really want you to know this thing about me, and I'm terrified to tell you right now. Like my heart is pounding and my armpits are sweating, and I worry that if I tell you this thing about what I want or what I'm worrying about, that you're gonna think I'm too much, or you're gonna think I'm sharing too much on the first date, or I'm gonna scare you away, or I'm, you know, whatever it is, like whatever pops up for you in the moment, there's always that to share. You know, it's not just like spewing out the things that you're worried, you know, the things that you're talking about right now. It's about sharing all the stuff that's happening in the moment as well. Yeah, and it doesn't have to all be, you know, the first 5 minutes that you're sitting down with him. So yeah.
the thing is, if you're looking for an intimate relationship, honesty is 100% necessary. There is nothing more intimate than being real with someone. In fact, if you're not showing up for who you really are, what you really think, what you really feel, that's not real intimacy. That's fantasy land stuff.
Yeah.
And
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of value too in sharing with him. You know, I so enjoyed our chatting with each other that I've been fantasizing a lot about like what could happen, what might our conversation be like, what happens if I share too much too soon, you know. Like I've kind of been living in Fantasyland, just considering all of these things. And
Yeah. And because Maggie, you and Vlad have both brought up this idea of romanticizing and fantasizing and stuff like that, it's totally great. Like beautiful. We can really just have such a wonderful time in the fantasy land. And also just recognizing that that is very different from actually like relating in an honest way with a real person. And so we want the ability to be able to do both. Most of us are already pretty good at fantasizing. It's the actual moment to moment relating and revealing what's going on with us that we find more difficult.
And one way, that we talk about that you can kind of bring things down to like real world engaging with someone, especially if we've been fantasizing about someone we don't know that much, someone we have a crush on, someone who we're sort of thinking like, oh my gosh, this person seems so great, is to, rather than staying in that fantasy land, to really narrow down, like, what are some of the things that he texted to me during that chat that I liked or that I appreciate him for? And we do just this very basic way of expressing this to someone in radical honesty, which is saying, I appreciate you for writing blank, and being really specific. Like when he wrote this particular thing to you during the chat, your heart pounded and you thought, oh my God, this guy sounds great. You can get clear about, oh yeah, when you wrote this, I really liked that. I liked that you wrote that to me. I appreciate you for writing that. I appreciate you for writing this. And it just brings things down to a more real world interaction level kind of thing, rather than keeping it to yourself and thinking like, oh, he's so unique, or he's so sensitive, or he's so caring, or all of these assessments of how he might be because of particular things that he wrote to you. It can kind of help bring us out of Fantasyland and be actually engaging with a real human being who just wrote some particular things to you in a chat that you feel excited about. Yeah, Carol. Let's see.
You're muted, Carol.
I don't know if I can do it. Can you?
I don't know how to raise my hand on
Well,
this.
yeah.
So how do I raise my hand? So I don't.
You're good. You
Like this.
I know, but I was trying not to be rude.
No, you're great.
So I'm sort of excited to hear an example between Lindsay and Mac of maybe a time when one of you said something that was honest that maybe you were afraid to say, and then the reaction, and kind of give a role play of how you maneuver through it.
Sure. I mean, we can do something along those lines. I don't know so much about the role play, but I think we can probably pretty easily recount.
Yeah.
Mac, what comes to mind for you at first, sharing something with me that you were afraid to share with me? Because usually that's the direction it went, I think.
Right, was me sharing something uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The first things that come to my memory are the few like kind of disaster scenarios. So I'm wanting to find like a positive example, and those aren't as.
I don't know. So start with a disaster one, because I think that there's value in that too. You mean one where we didn't come to any kind of resolution, even though we were being honest with each other, it like didn't end well or something? Is that what you mean comes to mind?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we meant, I guess I'll just say the very first one that I remember kind of early, several months into our relationship, we were in Asheville, and I remember we were sitting down for a coffee or something, lunch, something like that. And I was like, I'm afraid to tell you this, and I'm not as attracted to you sexually as I have been with previous partners, and I feel really tense about that, like I do right now. Like,
yeah. Well, I was prodding you for that though. Do you remember? Like you weren't just coming out with that. I had been asking you about that.
Okay, I don't remember that part.
Yeah, no, you were not. I don't think you were intending to come forward with that, because I asked you many times, because I had that feeling like, I don't feel like you're like, you can't keep your hands off of me or something, right. And I'm wanting that. And so I had been asking you. So you did share. Yeah. that's so long ago. It's hard for me to remember that conversation. And Carol, yeah, I'm trying to think how we could,
I'm still off mute? I'm off mute. I'm trying to think of maybe, I'm not sure that I would be so receptive to hearing something like that in a coffee shop with tons of people around.
yeah.
I'm
Probably
imagining
not.
that was probably, I'm not quite sure I could, I'm not sure what would happen actually.
Yeah.
And I
But-
kind of put that on me more than I put that on Mac, because Mac, I'm quite sure that I was very attached to this idea that you
Yeah.
weren't attracted enough to me in my estimation, up to my standards. Like I wanted you
Right.
to seem like you couldn't keep your hands off of me. So I was asking you a lot. So I imagine that I brought it up in that coffee shop with people around or whatever. And
Yeah.
yeah. And so I can't remember the conversation exactly. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure, Mac, what was there for you to say was like, oh God, I like really don't want to talk with you about
Mhm.
this. So, and again, I guess I want to point out that this was very early on in our
Within the first few
relationship
months, probably. Yeah.
and our practicing of radical honesty. So I doubt that that was like a very clean conversation. And I think,
Yeah.
I wrote about it some in the article too. So much of my motivation for wanting honesty from you was also to confirm my own like unhealthy habit of, I don't even know how to say what I want to say, but something around self-esteem, like I had some ideas of ways that I wasn't good enough or something. And so knowing that you weren't attracted to me could somehow confirm for me my own negative self-talk
Yeah.
or something like
Uh-huh.
that. Even
Exactly.
though also at the same time, I desperately just wanted you to be more attracted to me.
Right.
So I thought you being honest with me about those things could help you to get over that, get it out in the air so that you could eventually hopefully become more attracted to me physically.
Yeah. And like you
Um,
say, there was some amount of you looking for ammunition to both punish me with and also beat yourself up with.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm just looking at the chat again. So Carol, I think this still does kind of come back around to what Tamara was asking about too. Like, I don't
Go ahead.
I don't imagine that there's any such thing as oversharing in my thinking. I do imagine that there are things that are really hard, different for each of us as individuals. There are things that are really hard to hear or that we just really don't want to know. We don't want to know what that other person thinks because we're afraid of feeling all the feelings we'll feel in our body if I know that Mac says, yeah, I'm just really not that physically attracted to you. Oh my God, like all the physical feelings that come up there. So Tamara and Carol, like I think there's like so much of doing honesty in relationships with each other, like being radically honest in romantic relationships. I think there's a lot of just like setting the stage and creating the foundation. There is like conversation about, are we even going to be honest with each other about things we like don't like about how the other person looks? Like, do you actually really want me to be honest with you about what I like sexually about you, what I don't, like all of these things? Because it's easy for some people to think like, yeah, we're going to be really honest with each other, but there are just these automatic things that are off limits. Like, oh yeah, well, we're going to be honest with each other, but nobody talks about if you're not
Right.
attracted to, like, no, that's not good. You don't say that stuff. So I think that there is just like creating agreements with each other, just like kind of setting, like I said, setting the stage for like, okay, what does it mean to us to be really honest with each other? Because I think for some people, it means let's really see what happens if we are completely honest, especially about the things that I want to most avoid being honest about.
The thing is, the things that you withhold from someone poison the relationship every single time. If you are holding back something that is important and not saying that for fear of offending the other person, you are injecting poison into that relationship. Eventually, that is going to do some serious damage. So better to say that, even if it hurts real bad, even if it gets really ugly, even if it damages the relationship or even breaks you up, because not doing so is even worse.
And still, like there's hold on 1 minute, Blood. There's this way I want to say, like, Mac, what you're pointing to, you're using language like poisoning the relationship and stuff. And really, I imagine what you're saying is like what you said earlier, like intimacy, real intimacy between two people who are being very authentic is,
Mhm.
you can do that with honesty. The more that you withhold things, the less intimate your relationship is going to be. And some people can go their entire 50-year marriage only being a little bit honest about some things. And there
Yeah.
might be this poison there in everything, but really it just means a less intimate relationship or more conflict or more whatever, that can
Or
look all
just,
different ways and all different.
yeah, or even just
relationships.
distanced. And so if the kind of relationship that you want is very distanced, then that's fine. You can keep yourself at a distance by withholding things.
Right.
So
And if-
you're right, Lindsay.
Yeah. And if what you want is an intimate relationship, being your authentic self, like meeting someone in a relationship as your authentic self in an honest way, then yeah, honesty about all the things, which might, like Max said, which might mean doesn't end up being the person for you. Might mean that they don't like hearing the things you have to say and they want something else and you choose to not be with each other. And I want to get to what Wim said, and also well, hold on 1 minute, Vlad, just since we talked with you already. Mac, I don't know if you can see, Wim's question is it possible that sharing everything kills any sexual tension, mystique between each other?
I think
Yes
quite the,
and no.
I think, yeah. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah, I think I just did a lot of talking, so feel free to. But yeah, my short answer is, yeah, it's totally possible. Anything's possible. It's also possible that you can create like way more hotness and sexiness by sharing things. Like it may kill the mystique in a moment, and then it could be built way back, right back up in a different way, because you're then being really raw with each other about, whatever it is that you're doing or talking about. So yeah, that's a short answer. Mac, what were you?
No, that's great. I love that answer. And that was exactly what I was going for. There
Yeah,
is something that's incredibly hot about sharing the simple things at the level of noticing, like, oh, you just said that, you just moved in this way. Oh, I just love the color of your lips, right?
yeah.
That's fucking hot. And there's not any poetry in that. It's
Yeah.
just like, I see some detail about your face that I like.
Mm-hmm.
Or the way that you touch me here, just like very specific things, though, like just naming that and describing your experience from moment to moment is incredibly intimate and hot. And that means that, like you're saying, Lindsay, that means that sometimes that's going to kind of, bring down the attraction and the intensity, because if you're revealing the stuff you don't like as well.
Right.
But then also, like, there's something about like, oh, if I know that you're willing to tell me the things that you don't like, I can really trust when you say that you do like something, that you mean it.
Yeah. Yeah. And also when thinking about like sexual tension or mystique building, if there's a fear in sharing more because that might turn down the sexiness or whatever, I think like it's likely then that a lot of that sexiness that was happening is built on something superficial. It's built on like a fantasy that you're having about the person in your head, and you're worried, if I say too much of what's really happening, I'm going to kill that fantasy. And it's like, okay, so you might kill the fantasy, but like what Mac's talking about, like then just real actual stuff that's happening with that person can be happening in the moment, that can be a more genuine like turn on between the two of you. Like, okay, I'm not just thinking about what I imagine to be the case about you, like I'm actually here with you, present in the moment, sharing what I'm appreciating, sharing what's happening, sharing how I'm feeling in my body, and yeah, all of that kind of stuff. So Wim, anything else you're thinking about that, feel free to type it in if so. Thanks, Tamara, for joining us.
Bye, Tamara.
Yeah, so Wim, write more if there's more that you want to hear about that. And Vlad, do you remember what you were gonna ask a moment ago or say?
Yes, I was just gonna briefly touch upon it, and then I noticed, and I had to go to the other room to see the book that I had was actually the book from the founder of Radical Honesty, and it's called Radical Honesty. And
Uh-huh.
I've been reading this book, and I'm here, and I'm like, where does this seem familiar from?
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
And Maggie,
Yeah.
by the way, it's the same book that you gifted to the birthday person where we met. And I stole it. Yeah, I stole it off him. Borrowed. But yeah,
Aha.
I'll return
All
it.
right.
I'll return it.
Uh-huh.
But it just seemed familiar that he said something in that book that if two people are in a relationship, there comes a moment where he advises that those people share their entire intimate history with
Yeah.
one another.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a gradation. Okay, so it's stages to it. But here I want to touch also on Wim's question, because he said like something, and you answered about like poisoning the stuff. Like it's the opposite can also happen. Like so yeah, it's the threat of not being open can lead to poisoning, but also there's this really beautiful moment that he describes and I fantasize about in my relationship, to have this moment where we tell each other all of these intimate secrets
Yeah.
and really take our time,
Yeah.
because there is nothing
Great.
more beautiful than taking it slow for me
Yeah.
personally.
Love it.
And that's mostly what I wanted to say. And the thing about, did someone say veil? Or I had this moment when I was thinking about lines and veils in communication, like what can be said, what can be mentioned, what can maybe be alluded to, but not like in a very expressive way. Like Carol, you mentioned, like you wouldn't want to hear this in an open diner like setting. So it comes to safety, like fine tuning what is safe to communicate with that person at any given time,
Mm-hmm.
and then it becomes more navigable. Oh, and one last thing, I now feel so interested in this that I want to really deepen my understanding, and maybe even, I don't know, make years down the line become a coach in this thing. Like it feels like
Right.
100% spot on for me and the way I am.
Great.
Nice. Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Vlad.
Good to hear. And I'm
And
realizing we have just, oh, I thought Vlad just dropped off. So it's
Maggie did.
actually time that we're supposed to be finishing. And I'm telling myself we still didn't give a very thorough answer to Carol, or like enough of a
Of an example
description
from
of
our
how, yeah, an example of how conversations like this can go. And I think, most simply, like using the topic that Mac mentioned, with him sharing about his physical attraction to me or lack of physical attraction to me. I think if we were more practiced in radical honesty at the time, he shared with me like, oh God, I don't want to tell you this thing. I feel all this shit in my body, probably reported specifically what he was feeling. Like my heart is pounding, my armpits are sweaty. I feel, whatever in my body. And I don't want to tell you, like, I am less attracted to you than I have been to other people that I've dated. And then I think, like, for me, then in that moment, it would be like, oh God, okay, now I feel tension in my chest, and like I feel like I'm moving forward, whatever it is, like kind of just sharing, like, oh God, what came up in me physically when I hear Mac say something like that. And then just reporting the thoughts that I'm having, like, oh God, I hate to hear that. And if I feel mad at him for something, having said that, I'm sure I would have shared something like, I'm mad at you for saying that you're less attracted to me than you are to other people you've been with. I'm sad, like like if I'm crying, talking about being sad about it. There's really no, I don't know how to do this, without being in an actual conversation, Carol, so it's not super easy. But really it is all just about tuning into myself in the moment and sharing exactly what is there to share that's happening for me. These are the thoughts that I'm having. These are the things I'm feeling in my body. Here's what I'm imagining about you while we're having this conversation. Yeah, there's really just no there's no strategizing about it. It's really just a very simple, here's what's happening for me right now. Here are the judgments I'm having. Here are the things I'm making up in my mind based on what you just said. I'm telling myself I'm not good enough because you're not attracted to me. I'm telling myself, oh, it's because my breasts are too small. It's because my hair is too short. I'm not good at, whatever the thoughts are that I'm having. So again, yeah, I mean, maybe doing this in a coffee shop isn't always the best idea because things can become really emotional. Yeah, and I don't know a better way to give you like a role. Yeah, I mean, it's not a role play, and it's kind of just again, a reminder about, it's really simply just reporting what's happening in the moment.
Can you
And
think of another example, Lindsay, where, where sharing something difficult between us kind of went well quicker, like it wasn't so difficult for us?
I think it's harder for me to think of those examples because really
You don't
so
remember
much
them,
of
yeah.
the point of radical honesty is to like go through the experience in the moment so that you can get over it, so that what's happening for you in the moment can come and go. So often when those conversations are fast and go well, like go well meaning I actually express all the stuff that's there for me. I fully experience my experience and I get over it. I often forget those conversations, Mac,
Yeah.
because I processed them at the time. Where the
Yeah, it's
things
true.
that took us 10 conversations about the same topic because they were so hard, those are the ones I remember more easily,
Yeah.
because I
Good
was so
point.
caught up in them.
That's a good point. And I remember that when we were dating, we were basically just kind of in it all the time. Like we were
Yeah.
constantly reporting difficult truths to one another and
Yeah.
expressing ourselves in ways that were challenging. That was just like kind of the foundation of the relationship.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, we'd go a whole week or a month without being real and then have like a backlog of stuff that we needed to unload. It was just kind of like throughout the day, and we lived together for much of this time too.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of, we may have even been little process junkies, I think, and just
I
kind of
think
in
so.
it
And
too
I
much.
think for me personally, I think I kind of needed that that was like a phase or a stage I needed to go
Yeah.
through that I
Yeah.
don't remember or don't imagine I'm in now, like I don't, for me now, if a relationship was working that way, where so often I was
Yeah.
feeling uncomfortable or doubting myself, it just wouldn't work. I wouldn't choose that anymore.
Yeah.
Like
Same.
what we were talking about at the beginning. Like I so just wanted to be with you that I thought like, okay, we just need to get through all of this stuff so that we can just more comfortably be with each other. When really I don't think that was possible for us because we just wanted different things. So
Yeah.
now a relationship like that, a lot of those things would be sort of like red flags for me now. Okay, if we're needing
Yeah.
to process this much,
Right.
this just isn't a good fit for me. Like
Yeah.
this isn't what I want.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
eventually kind of what we came to, is the recognition of that. And it took us a while.
Right. And because I think for me, I needed to go through that. I needed to learn, oh, that's something that's not very appealing to me. Like Mac as
Yeah.
a human being is, I want to know you. I want to have you in my life. I want to, talk when we talk and all of those things. And I don't want the things that we brought to each other in a romantic relationship.
Yeah. Raluca, you say, does written conversation count? I don't recommend at all, like, conversations about conflict to be written in text or email or, long letters or anything like that. Face to face or video chat is okay, but not even like phone call, because you can't see the person's face. There's so much of the communication that you're missing out on when all you have is the voice or the written word.
The thing is that I have a situation. I mean, I'm seeing a guy since January, and he has very, very little free time. He works like 12 hours a day, including Saturday, and we hardly meet very few in times, and we
Yeah.
talk a lot by WhatsApp.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's we did had some difficult conversation on WhatsApp because that's the only way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Can you
I don't
have a
know
video?
if that's
Can you do a video call on WhatsApp?
Yeah, but we normally write.
Yeah.
It's the dynamic we have.
Yeah.
So much of radical honesty, like I said a moment ago, is about being in the experience in the moment, you know, feeling all the stuff that comes up for us as we're having a conversation, and getting out of our minds, getting out of our imaginations, and actually being in reality in the moment with the person. So texting, writing, emails, all of that kind of stuff, it's just so necessarily the way that that works is we are just in our imaginations. You know, we're imagining what the tone is, we're imagining what he meant when he said that, he's imagining what I meant when I wrote that. There's just way too much room for misinterpretation and misunderstanding and just entirely being in your imaginations. And you know, it's fine to use text or something like that in our practice. I mean, you can do whatever you want in your life, obviously. And just in the practice of radical honesty, we absolutely strongly encourage doing it face to face so you can actually be there in the experience with that person. So, you know, using WhatsApp to invite an in-person or a video conversation, great, you know, and tell them like, I imagine we really need to have a conversation with each other. And maybe part of the thing is, maybe there's not enough time that it works for you, you know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not going to go too much there.
It's about him, and I mean, if I don't talk to WhatsApp, I don't talk to him at all. So it's kind of I don't know. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, so maybe that's where you're at, is take it or leave it. Like, does this work for me to just be having a WhatsApp relationship with someone?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be an important thing to communicate with him. Like, hey, I don't like how this is going. We only like text on WhatsApp. That's not enough for me. I want to have a I want to have a video call with you to at least talk about that and then see where you go.
And maybe that's a process, you know, maybe that's something that's going to take you some time to figure out for yourself. Maybe right now in some way that does feel like enough for you and you keep doing it, or maybe, you know, it'll take you a few months to who knows, you know, it could go all different ways. And
yeah, I don't know. We will see.
Yeah, it sounds to me like he is kind of keeping, because of his situation or whatever, he's kind of keeping the relationship at a text only kind of thing. And it sounds like that's not really working for you. So if that's true, that's what I imagine to be true. I think it'd be great to just share that with him and have a conversation about that, because what you want is just as important as what he wants, I think.
And Mac, we're at 10 minutes over our time now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Vlad, let's see if we can quickly answer this and then be done in like the next 5 minutes. Obviously, if anybody needs to sign off, feel free to do that. When you were process junkies, does that mean you were just talking too much or about too many repeating topics? I'd appreciate you sharing your favorite best practices for keeping it real without getting too didactical. Process junkies, meaning I don't think we were good at just letting things be when we, like for me, I think anytime I felt any discomfort in my body around anything I was imagining or anything that Max said, I like felt the need to talk about it now and talk about it until we got to resolution. You know, like I always was like needing some relief from how I was feeling or what I was imagining. And I think for me, processing it, I thought like, surely we're going to get to something that feels good. You know, surely we're going to get to, it makes sense for us to be together. And surely at some point we're going to get to, it's just easy and feels nice to be together. Yeah, so I think for me, having discomfort in my body meant we need to work on this and we need to resolve it now. And also we just both really liked, at that point in our lives, really liked talking about things and considering things and kind of picking things apart and what does this mean? And what can we do about this? And I think we just liked that too.
Yeah.
You know?
We were both just really interested in our own growth at the time, in our own process, like what the fuck is going on with me right now, and really interested in each other too.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the way that our minds worked. Like for me, one of the things that most drew me to you, Lindsay, was just the way that your mind works, the way that you listened to me and reflected your thoughts back to me, how open and honest and vulnerable you were with me. And that was so exciting and so new for me that I just wanted to be in that all the time, even when it was painful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it can be so exciting to get to see so much of another person.
Yeah.
Even when it hurts, it's like, this is so stimulating. That was so stimulating for me to get like so many glimpses into like who you are and what you were thinking and how your mind was working. And yeah.
And to have somebody like know me in a way that I think no one had ever known me before.
Yeah.
Because I felt comfortable enough to share who I really was with you in ways that I was never allowed myself to do with anybody else.
Yeah.
And so that was intoxicating for me.
Yeah.
And I think that we kind of were just really in it. And we probably could have benefited from just taking breaks from that every now and again. Like, hey, we're just going to watch a dumb fucking movie and not like talk about our feelings.
Have fun. Yeah. Just like be chill and have fun with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wim asked, are we noticing that we're processing less in our next relationships after that? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think regardless of how much Mac and I resolved with each other at the time, I mean, we've resolved much more now, far outside of that relationship with each other. But I think I resolved a lot in myself around like needing so much reassurance or needing to comfort myself through hearing what he had to say. Like doing so much of that with you, Mac, definitely, it helped me get to some understandings of my own about myself, where I don't imagine it's as necessary for me to like know every little thing the other person is thinking all the time. So
yeah. And we addressed this a little bit in our newsletters, but so I think so much of what we benefited from is that we brought up each other's insecurities in relationship to one another, and we dealt with them. In most relationships, that's not what happens. You avoid and protect each other's insecurities. So you kind of keep each other down in a particular kind of way. In an attempt to be nurturing, you're actually holding each other down. And you and I, our insecurities really came to the surface, and we got the opportunity to deal with them together. And that was incredibly nurturing in a way that now in my current romantic relationships, those things don't get triggered as hard for me anymore. Like I'm not so insecure about all of the things that I was insecure about when I was in relationship with Lindsay. And so I don't feel the need to like resolve all of that and convince my partner that I'm, so fucking smart and funny and, all of those things that I didn't feel like in relationship to Lindsay.
Yeah. And I'm so much more clear now about things that I want and don't want and what works for me and doesn't work for me in romantic relationships. Like as much as I don't like it, it's really important to me that the person I'm with is really physically attracted to me. And I know that now, and I'm not going to, and I also am so clear that I'm not going to try to convince anyone anymore that they should be more attracted to me or they should be more into me in any way. It's like, now I would know that just didn't work for me. That just doesn't work for me. Where then I was just desperate to change the situation and thought that I could somehow through honesty, surely honesty is going to help us resolve all of this.
Yeah.
Is what I thought.
And I'm thinking another part of that conflict with you too was that you were also very adamant that like physical appearance should not be important. That like women in general should not be so concerned with their physical appearance and men being attracted to them. And dealing with that is really important to me.
Yes, I was super judgy about you. I thought like, oh, what kind of a guy are you if it matters to you so much that I'm like not as feminine as you, whatever. And so I was like constantly wanting to convince you, change you, shame you for thinking the things that you thought. And
And the same thing was coming up for me in the way that you were relating to your ex-boyfriend, and in this kind of like, you had this kind of admiration and respect for him that you didn't have for me, and that was very painful for me, and I
Yeah.
tried to shame you for that.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just a fucking guru worshiper. Oh, you like, that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. So we learned a lot about ourselves, and a lot of it we weren't really able to, for me at least, I wasn't even really able to access. In the moment, I didn't realize how much I was learning. It's not until being
Yeah.
able to look back on it a bit and just see the stuff I was integrating and getting at the time, that now I'm, just much more clear about things that are important to me and things I do and don't want, like I said.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
All right.
yeah. So we will be doing another one of these conversations that you all are invited to. Again, it's not until like a couple weeks from now. We'll be sending out more information about it, and you'll be included in that, since now we have your information from this one, because I can't think of what the date is right now.
For the next webinar.
Yeah, the next one.
I could look it up, and I don't remember off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
I don't remember either. Anyway, we'll share information with you at some point about the next call that we're going to do, which is in probably like 10 or 14 days from now.
Isn't it on the 31st? It's on Halloween.
Oh, that's right. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the end of this month.
Boo. It's time to get honest.
Boo. Okay, yeah. Thank you all for joining us today. And it was nice to have this conversation with you. And I think Mac and I could both just like talk about this stuff. So thanks for your questions and everything.
Like we did for 5 years.
Yeah. And maybe we'll see you on the next call. We are
All right.
done.
Oh, I like that. Masks off for the 31st. That's good. We're stealing that. Thanks, Vlad.
That's a good one. Yes.
Yeah.